So it appears the economy is heading headlong right into a recession. Now, that's according to economists at Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and Moody's Analytics. Now, and they say that it's all thanks to Donald Trump. Now, experts at these financial institutions, they all point at Donald Trump's trade policies as being the biggest driver towards taking the economy towards a recession, right? Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, said on Monday, quote, "I think recession is increasingly likely. I'd put the odds at just over even for a recession between now and the end of 2020. So that's 50%, assuming the president follows through on his tariff threats." Okay, now what's interesting is that, look, there's no reason that Trump won't increase the tariffs because he's not getting what he wants, right? And also because he doesn't know how his tariffs actually work. Again, he continues to repeat the lie that it's the Chinese that are paying the tariffs. No, the Chinese people do not pay tariffs. It's the importers that are paying the tariffs, right? And there are things, of course, that the United States imports from China. Now, what happens when the importers pay the price? Well, they ended up passing that increase off to the consumer. So I guess in the end, we pay for it. It's kind of like a tax on Americans. So that's how that works. Donald Trump doesn't seem to get how that works. And of course, if you don't understand how increased prices on consumers will end up hurting the economy, then you don't understand anything about economics. Now, Jan Hatzius, chief economist at Goldman Sachs, also said that the trade war with China is also likely to hurt U.S. growth more than previously forecast. He said, fears that the trade war will trigger a recession are growing. 2 days later, Bank of America economists said the chances of a recession had risen from 20% to about 33%, so a little bit more optimistic than Moody's, adding that our model likely does not fully capture the threat of U.S.-China trade relations or tensions spiraling into a more severe trade war, which we view as the biggest downside risk for the U.S. economy. We are worried, they wrote. Okay, so look, should you be worried about a recession? Yes, I think you should. We have an idiot running the White House who was making ridiculous, trade rules. Okay, instead of increasing trade and helping with our trade imbalance, our trade deficit, he's actually made it worse. And again, he has hurt farmers in the Midwest from these tariffs. Now, in response to some of these tariffs, China has stopped completely buying agriculture products from the United States, choosing to go somewhere else and to make deals with other countries. Well, that's a big sector of the economy that has just lost out. And if you think $16 to $20 billion worth of bailouts to farmers is going to fix this now long-standing problem, then that's just simply not correct. So they are right to be worried. Now, there are other warning markers that I've seen that they do not necessarily talk about. And that's, of course, the general economy, where you have, of course, stagnant wages along with increasing wealth and income inequality. Now, you had the tax cuts for the rich, for example, that were passed. 83% of that went to the top 1%. And whatever economic stimulus had come out of the tax cuts, which is usually short term, is starting to peter out. Okay. Not only that, but of course, since 2008, there's been very little regulation on the banks, on the same banks, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, etc., that caused the last recession. Now, what we have a problem with is massive speculation. We have a problem with derivatives, credit default swaps. They're all still a thing, and they're all still fairly unregulated, right? And there's a reason for that, because after 2008, they passed Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank was incredibly weak to begin with, but since then, it has been chipped away by Republicans and corporate Democrats that are saying, oh, the regulations on the banks, they're too tough. We need to peel back some of these regulations and allow them to do more high risk speculative trading. Well, no, we don't. That's terrible. We should not be doing that. That is the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be increasing regulation on the banks. We should be separating investment banking with commercial banking. That's another thing. That's Glass-Steagall. And, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We should also have a financial transaction tax on a lot of these speculative trades to kind of slow it down and reduce, of course, commodity trading. But that's just some of the things that we should do that we're obviously not. Now, some of the other problems, of course, is stagnant wages and really slow growth. So what's going to happen is not going to be good, right? Already, GDP is projected to slow to 1.8 in the fourth quarter, right? 1.8%. Donald Trump promised to be 3%. And even that's not awesome. Job growth has also fallen from 220,000 a month last year to 140,000 in recent months. If it goes below 100,000, the level of job creation won't be enough to supply the growing labor market. And of course, you'll have unemployment that starts to go up. Now, we've already seen also a lot of job layoffs from companies who benefited very mightily, I should say, from the Trump tax cuts. You have places like Carrier that laid off, even though they made special deals. You have Harley Davidson, you have AT&T, you have GM that just shut down a plant in Ohio. So you have all these different layoffs of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. And then where do these people go? They end up going into low-wage service sector jobs. So the economy right now, it's not, again, if you look at it from a wealthy person's perspective, if you only look at how Wall Street's doing, then you would say, oh, we're doing pretty good. Or if you just look at some of the raw numbers, oh, look, unemployment's down. But you also have to look at some of the long-term trends and some of the systemic problems inside of our system. You also have, again, speaking of debt, right? Student loan and personal debt. That could end up being the catalyst, just like mortgages. It could be the catalyst for a next recession. Again, over $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. That surpasses old credit card debt. That's also part of the consumer debt bubble. One of these are going to burst. So there are a lot of issues, right? So now, of course, MAGA people watching this, some of them are probably laughing because they don't see the warning signs. And we've seen this before. We've seen a lot of these warning signs back before 2008. But we also saw people laughing it off, saying, oh, no, we've got a strong economy. What are you talking about? No, we've got the best economy, and it's only going to continue to surge forward. Well, that's not the case. It wasn't the case then, and it won't be the case now. I believe there will be another recession. It's just a matter of when it will happen. Will it happen in 2020? Will it happen in 2022? A lot of these experts, these economists are saying, in between that window, it is very likely that it could happen if we don't correct course. And if we don't correct course, if we continue with the status quo, it will happen. And a lot of people will end up being extremely hurt by this. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.